Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today, I am talking to someone very near and dear to me, Nancy Hayden. Wow, Nancy Hayden. She was my first teacher when I started taking improv, 12 years ago now. And she was just, I couldn't have asked for a more perfect introduction to improv. And it's something that just changed my life. I can't even get into how many ways it sort of changed my life, but also saved my life. I was in this phase of feeling like I was losing myself a little bit. And quite frankly, I don't think I knew who I was too well prior to that. But after the whirlwind of becoming a mother and a wife and all that stuff and domesticating myself, so sounds like a weird way to put it, but I felt like a lot of the things that gave me joy and gave me maybe a spark of personality, I felt like a lot of that was slipping away. I just had this moment one day where I looked at my little baby girl and I said, I don't want this child or any future children I may have to watch their mom kind of go through the motions of life without trying for her dreams or her passion. And no matter what success level, I achieve with that, I want my kids to at least be a witness to me honoring the things within myself that give me passion and purpose. So that was a big reason I signed up for an improv class because I knew I loved comedy. I always wanted to be an actress. I just wanted to be in a creative space. And walking into that first class, of course, I was nervous and excited. And I still remember Nancy walking in. It was in the lobby of Go Comedy Theater in Ferndale, Michigan. And she had this big smile on her face and was like, hey, guys, we're all kind of standing there, the new students. And oh, my goodness, there's certain times in life where things just click. And for me, improv made a lot of things kind of click into place. It's a very satisfying feeling. And I kid you not, within the first maybe 20 minutes of that class, I felt that click happen. And I haven't looked back since. And Nancy was a huge part of that. I've always said to anyone who would listen that I was so lucky to have her lead me into the world of improv and comedy and all of that stuff because she's a real gift. So to give you guys a little bit of a background on Nancy Hayden, she began as a writer-performer on the main stage cast of The Second City in Detroit. And after co-writing and appearing in 5 revues, Nancy went on to become the director of several Second City productions. And in her television career, Nancy has worked as a staff writer for Detroiters on Comedy Central, as well as several productions for Bravo, including Bravo After Hours and the digital series The Ex-Housewife. She also wrote shorts for DreamWorks TV and Awesomeness TV, and co-wrote Love Factually, the hit holiday parody that ran at the Kennedy Center. As if that's not enough, Nancy has taught improvisation, acting, directing, and writing at the Second City and improv sketch creation at Michigan State University, woohoo, go green, and California Institute of Arts. She also served as the producer of the Second City Detroit before becoming Associate Artistic Director of the Second City Hollywood. She was then named Artistic Director of the Second City Training Center in Chicago. Most recently, Nancy was thrilled to return to her beloved hometown of Detroit, where she was named Executive Director of the Detroit Creativity Project, a nonprofit that provides improv training as a crucial life skill to the students of the Detroit Public Schools. I can't say enough great things about Nancy, truly. She is a gift, and I feel so incredibly honored that she agreed to do my podcast. So without further ado, here is my chat with Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Thank you so much for being on Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast.
Hi, Shivani. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, we have such a great history together.
Yeah.
You were my favorite no offense to any of my other teachers, but my first and favorite improv instructor in Detroit, Go Comedy, it was a life-changing experience for me. And
Aw.
to have it kicked off with your guidance and advice, and just, my introduction to improv was just fantastic. So
Well, that is very kind of you to say. Thank you. That is very, very kind. And you've got the goods. So it was so fun to work with you. It's
thank
you
you.
are hilarious and yeah, really, you're a very, very good improviser. So
Thank
that makes
you.
teaching fun.
It really does. Everything comes full circle. I've done my bit, my share of teaching
Yeah.
now as well. So it really does make it fun when,
Mm-hmm.
people are open to the art of improv.
Yeah, absolutely. And having fun. And yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of people that take improv and for all kinds of reasons.
Yes.
And it's, it's a different kind of fun to help someone, be better at public speaking or be a
Yeah.
better attorney or what have you, or a better parent or person or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
when people are also incorporating it into their acting and into their career, it's really fun to be able to, and an honor to help people with stuff like that. So
I totally agree. It's so funny you say that, because I often think about that first class that I took with you. And I remember you've taught like a billion classes, so you probably don't remember, but it was like an abbreviated session that Go Comedy Theater was offering, and I
oh
jumped on it.
yeah,
And
I do
we
remember
had a
that.
big class. I remember
Yeah,
that. Like now being,
yeah.
because as you go along in the programs at a lot of these theaters, it kind of, gets dwindled down
Dwindles down.
as it gets more
Yeah, yeah.
intense.
Right, right.
But gosh, yeah, just speaking to the different walks of life, I remember we had a kindergarten or a teacher who was
Mm,
the next year she was starting to teach kindergarten. So she was like,
yeah,
I have to be so much more engaging, with my presence. So I thought taking improv would be great.
right.
I remember we had, I believe, an automotive like executive in our
Yeah,
class, and he was just like, well, I have to lead a lot of meetings. And I just
yeah,
remember loving that. There were so
yeah.
many cool different reasons that
That's
people
right.
were there. And yeah,
Yeah,
what a great art form. I still to this day am so thankful that I had that background.
me
And it's an
too.
asset with acting, I will say.
It is. I mean, yeah, you don't go on
You know that.
auditions anymore without it being utilized. And I
Hmm.
can remember early on when, I think I was living in Chicago at the time and even a little bit in LA, going on a commercial audition and the buzz kind of going around the waiting room when someone would come out and be like, oh, they had me improvise. And, they're like sweating bullets and their face is gray. And then
Yeah.
everybody else's face in the room starts turning ash because they're all terrified. And you're just sitting in the corner like, oh,
Yeah. Oh,
yay, this is going to
thank
be
God.
fun because you're not scared to go in there and improvise. But now it's
Yes.
just part of it. I mean, I don't, you don't
Yeah.
go on commercial auditions anymore where they're not like, okay, do one for you.
Oh, I love that. I know it's my
Yeah.
favorite part, because sometimes it is so strict where it's like word
Mm-hmm.
perfect. We need this word perfect. And you're like,
Yeah.
that's when I start sweating bullets. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh
Me
God,
too.
can I just make this a
Me
little bit?
too.
It's
Yep.
not,
But I was going to do this fun thing.
I know.
Yeah. Yep.
Great. Okay, so Nancy, I really would love to start with, what is your history with Seinfeld? Did you watch it when it was initially on? Are you kind of late to the party with that syndication? What's your history with the show?
All of the above. I absolutely watched it when it was first on. I mean, it was outside of Roseanne, it was kind of like the first stand up gets a sitcom deal,
Yeah.
right? And it was the first one that I had seen that really incorporated the act too. Remember, like,
Yeah.
because Roseanne didn't do that. So it
Right.
was kind of like Roseanne in the 80s was like this phenomenon. And then she got her own show. And that was really cool for all of us, especially for, I think, girls and women. But then Seinfeld he was a phenomenon. And then I think every week to incorporate a little bit of his act and then have that be this even loosely tied together part of the theme
Yeah.
of the show was just so cool. And then as everybody knows, it was kind of the birth of the like perfect ensemble,
Yeah.
I think, sitcom. And it's been modeled many times over and over again since then because it's a blueprint that I think he and Larry David nailed perfectly.
For
And
sure.
it wasn't, and I think they knew, and Jerry Seinfeld has, I think, talked about this and joked about this many, many times, that he wasn't necessarily an actor. And so
Mhm.
surrounding him with this ensemble that was going to be just as funny and just absolutely killer ensemble was so crucial or it wasn't going to make it. So I remember thinking that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
And then the earliest syndication stuff that I remember was when I was working at Second City. And then it became kind of a different, it's like a study tool, like there's something about the multicam sitcom that's like set up, punchline, set up, punchline.
Totally.
And it's just it's a joke, marathon. And it becomes this really great, lesson in learning how to write comedy.
Yeah.
So I kind of started looking at it from that point of view too.
Right. That's so interesting you say that, because, it also tended to not follow that kind of pattern as well. Because I remember it was so interesting. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, she was on Jerry Seinfeld's show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. And she talked about auditioning for the show, Seinfeld. And she was saying how she felt, and this is, you're right, that like in more, I think in the later seasons, they went by that formula, the setup, punchline.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it was very conversational. It's and as I'm rewatching the show, I'm seeing this evolution. I'm in season 6 now, as we're going to be talking about the Jimmy, and as like the writers kind of changed over, I think Jerry and Larry were less involved because they were just running this massive show. But when they were predominantly writing it, they didn't kind of go by that formula. And so Elaine, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, JLD for short, she said that, oh my gosh, when I got the sides, I was like, this is phenomenal, because it's not set up, punchline.
Yeah.
But this will never happen. Like they'll never put this on TV, So that was very much her.
No one's going to watch a show about nothing. It'll get canceled in half a season.
Right. It's so funny what they're talking about, but this is not like what's palatable, quote unquote, to, the mass audience, I guess.
Well, and I think it's funny that you mentioned the audience, because I was just thinking, sitting here, like, I think two things happen. I think the show begins to take on a life of its own as it gains an identity and a following. And so part of the reason I think why it becomes set up, punchline is because the audience has such a love for the characters after a while.
Right.
And this happened with Friends too. It's like now there's emotion tied in, and there's that like, that's so Kramer. Like he didn't have to do anything after a while. Yeah. None of them did. You know what I mean? No. They'd like, she'd push him and it would just be, it would just kill. It would slay, and George would come in, flustered, like, well, I did it again. And everybody, and just like, oh, what did he do? We know it's something terrible. He's such an idiot, Yeah. I mean, and so your anticipation of like, loving and knowing the characters and feeling like they're friends and feeling that like their family, that's when a sitcom gains its wings.
Well, totally. And it's so
takes to flight.
It takes to flight. We're gonna get really in the weeds with being like sitcom nerds and students of comedy here, but another observation I made, and you can appreciate this, I think, as a writer, as I'm making my notes for the episodes, I do scene by scene. And in the first 2, maybe 2.5 to 3 seasons, at the most, there were 10 to 12 scenes. Wow. So that meant it was longer scenes with more back and forth dialogue, a little bit more, like conversational and not so punchliney, as we see in the later seasons. Now that I'm in season 6, we're going on 16 to 17 scenes per episode. Yeah. So it's these shorter bursts of comedy with a lot of physicality or different devices to use to get like the quick laughs. So it's really interesting. Like, I never would have noticed that before, but now I'm doing this rewatch, I'm like, that's not how it was in the beginning. I mean, every show evolves, right? But that was just something I really noticed with Seinfeld.
I think it also gets to a point where, like we're talking about with the audience loving the characters, where each of the other 3 gain enough of an identity and enough of a following and a love of the audience that they don't need Jerry to be the linchpin any longer. So whereas, it needed to be conversational in the first couple of seasons because he was the center hub of everything, right?
Totally.
And obviously he still was. I mean, the show is Seinfeld, but I mean, we could we didn't ever go to work with George really that much until,
Sure.
you know what I mean, until he
Until he
started
was
getting,
in, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
working for the Yankees or whatever. And
Hmm.
same thing with her and her
Yeah.
job. And, it's like we didn't go off and explore their lives. It was their lives they were bringing their lives and their days into Jerry's apartment to talk to him about it, or
Yeah,
to the delicatessen to talk to him about it. But
exactly.
yeah, so I think that's when you start getting more scenes, maybe.
I think so too. Yeah, they definitely gave them, each of them, more, their plots could stand on their own. I think that's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot what you were saying. But and also Elaine and Kramer were definitely the two characters they needed to flesh out quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that's something I was noticing from the beginning as well. And that's because they were loosely based on friends of theirs in real life, Larry and Jerry's. But
Mm-hmm.
because Larry and Jerry were sort of fully formed, because they were based either, well, Jerry's playing himself, Larry
Yeah.
was pretty much George.
Yeah.
Those two characters, they had more meat in the beginning. So yeah,
Right.
it really took time, which is like, again, everything comes along at the time it's supposed to. But I don't think now a show would be given that much latitude to figure
Mm-hmm.
themselves out.
No, you've got to
Yeah.
have it all in the beginning. I mean, even in the pitch, in the
Right.
room, you can't go into a room. I mean, you can if you're Jerry Seinfeld. So,
Exactly.
let's face it, he and Larry David could sell that show by saying it's about him and the observations of his life, and it's a show about nothing. And those two characters, oh, don't worry about them. We'll figure that out. And they'll be like, okay, where do we sign? We'll put this on and see how it goes. But if you're starting out and you're selling a show, yeah, you better know every minor character's blood type because
Right.
they want to know. I
Yeah.
saw a Variety article with her where she was talking about asking for more screen time to them, and I loved
Yes.
the way she put it, because she was like, it was, you've probably seen this, you've
Mhm.
seen everything about her, but you probably read this article, but she was saying like, it really didn't have anything to do with gender. It wasn't even about my gender. It wasn't, I didn't feel like, oh, the woman on the show doesn't have enough to do. And so it's funny that you mentioned like she and Kramer, both the characters were in that, and she said, I just wanted to play. They were
Yeah.
having fun and I just wanted to play more. And so I would
Yeah.
go to Larry and Jerry and be like, give me more. I want to do more. And,
Yeah.
and in a fun, good way, and she, and they did it, and she said, so I just kept asking for more to do, and then they're great guys, and they gave it to me, and I thought that was really cool, and I thought it was very telling of, and maybe that's because it's my background, but I feel like that is an attitude that comes from somebody who's got like an improv background, a Second City background, a
Hmm.
Saturday Night Live background, where
Yeah,
you're kind of known for having to like scrap for your material, right? And be like,
for
put
sure.
me in this thing, put me in this thing. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's one of the things that makes her so magical as a performer, and as with that character.
Yeah.
I think a lot of women in that role would have been like, I'm third or fourth banana to this amazing ensemble, and I'm
Hmm.
going to be the girl that shows up every once in a while, and that's great. Look at me, I'm
Yeah.
on TV, I'm on the biggest sitcom on television.
Yeah.
But because she is the powerhouse that she is, and not in an arrogant way, and not in a
No.
like, write more for me or I'm leaving kind of way, just like,
Yeah.
I want to have fun, I can come in and make this scene fun.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
she's so darn good that it was just, you just can't miss how fantastic she is. So I think they knew that.
I think that's one of the huge reasons I am such an admirer of hers. I think I
Hmm.
do know that anecdote. I think I read it elsewhere, but I'm sure she's
Yeah.
talked about it many times. And yeah, I just really was like, what a badass. Because
I
especially in that
know.
time, right? It was the early
Yes.
90s, for a
Yes.
woman to sort of advocate for herself in a totally, not just in the cast, but the crew, the entire production team, the writers were all men in the
Hmm.
beginning. So it's
Hmm.
like, for her to say, give me more, I know I can do it. She knew
Yeah.
what she was worth, she knew her
Yeah.
self-worth, she knew
Yeah.
what she could bring. And yeah, I completely agree with you with that background of sketch, improv, SNL. It's like,
Yeah.
she talks about being on SNL and being a baby and not even
Hmm.
understanding, like
She
she
was
couldn't
such
even
a
believe
baby.
she was there. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
was like, but she always talks about it as a big learning experience. And I think
Sure.
maybe she did bring that into her attitude of like, hey, I'm cast on this show, I'm a
Yeah.
principal character. um I'm not meant to be an in and out every now and then, I'm supposed
Mm-hmm.
to be there a lot. And
Yeah.
it's funny you say it's because I agree. I don't think it's with arrogance. It was just like, hey, I'm here, you use me because I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
While conversely, and I think Jason Alexander is one of the most talented
Oh
actors out
man, he
there.
so
And
is.
he's very forthright with this as well. So I'm not trying to like dog him or anything, but he would have those moments, but it was because it was ego. And
Yeah.
he says that, there's
Yeah.
that episode of Seinfeld where they go to Florida and
Mm-hmm.
he and Kramer do not make it. George and Kramer are not in it at all. It's when
Mm.
the Stella, when she takes
Mm-hmm.
so it's just Jerry and Elaine and they're
Oh
in
yeah, they
Florida
go to
the
his
entire,
parents' house. I remember
yeah, go to
that.
his
Yep.
parents' house. And Jason Alexander had a meltdown and
Wow.
literally said to Larry David, hey, if you feel like you can have an episode without George, then how about you just permanently write me out? Or so it was, I'm
Whoa.
paraphrasing, but it was, and he, again, he talks about this. I have the DVD, so I watch all the extras. And so
Mm-hmm.
he's
Mm-hmm.
very open about what he said. And, I guess Larry David was like, what the hell are you talking about? This was just an idea for an
It
episode. This
was
wasn't,
just an idea. We couldn't think of a reason for everyone to go to Florida.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, Michael Richards gave his little 2 cents too. He's like, yeah, I was
Mm-hmm.
pretty bummed not to be in the episode because I thought it was a great
Yeah.
episode. And for him, it was more about that. It was like, hey, that was so
Yeah.
fun. I wish I was a part of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as women so much in comedy and being in these male dominated shows or whatever, whichever level you are, it's like I love that example of her advocating for
Yeah.
herself. Because what's the worst that can happen? They won't
Yeah.
listen to you, but they did.
Right. And she was able to create obviously so much more out of that character than was originally intended, and probably far more than they ever intended, because
Exactly.
they got really, I mean, I think they're brilliant guys, and I'm sure they were very smart with who they cast. I'm sure they know damn well who they cast, but they
Sure.
also got really lucky with who they cast, because
Absolutely.
when you think about, like you were saying, a female character at that time, and what was going through my mind was, what were the characters like back then? Like, I'm really
Yep.
trying to cast my mind back to when we were kids, right? And it's like, what were the characters like in the late 80s, early 90s, like predecessors to this? And you kind of were, to be a funny woman on television,
Mm-hmm.
you were either the you were either the straight guy to your funny
Mm-hmm.
partner,
Yep.
honeymooners, all in the family,
Totally. Yep.
dingbat, right? Or you were like this crazy monster,
Yes.
which is kind of what Roseanne sort of had to be, and I'm only talking about the first show. I never saw the second one that they
No,
brought
no.
back. We
Yeah.
won't get into any of that, but like
Yeah.
what she did in the 80s at that time with that original show.
Mm-hmm.
But and I think what Elaine was able to do was, like, on paper, this is Jerry's ex-girlfriend.
Right.
This is who's now a friend. So
Yeah.
right away, when you read that as a woman, you read the sides. It's like, okay, this is love interest woman. So she's got to be pretty. She's got to, she can't be, crazy looking. She can't be,
Right.
she can't do anything that's too, because she's got to be pretty enough that he dated her. Right.
Exactly. And
So to be able
intellectual
to,
enough to
and
be,
it,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So to be able to lift that character from
Mm-hmm.
what they intended it to be,
Right.
and and I'm sure they meant, they thought that it would be. I'm sure Jerry and Larry thought it would be a great character from the get go. It's like, this is someone he dated. Now they're friends. That's a
Yep.
really cool dynamic to put on television.
Yeah.
But she was able, like, to carve out her own identity for that character in so many
Yes.
ways.
And yeah, and
That,
I mean, to your point of like, when I said they didn't really know much. They knew they wanted the Elaine character. They just didn't know who she was. She wasn't fully formed.
right.
And certainly Julia Louis-Dreyfus informed so much of what she turned out to be.
She made it. You made her pretty. She made her ugly. She made her crazy. She
Oh my
made her
gosh.
this. She was all at once the smartest one of the four of them, quite
Totally.
often, and also like the craziest. You know what I mean? Like, to be able to
Yeah.
do all of those things and to make yourself look as as ugly as you look when you're doing, like, the dance episode,
dance,
or
yep.
like all of that. Like, she was
Exactly.
not afraid to look ridiculous as a comedian. And I'm here to tell you, like, right around that same time, just after that same time, was when I started Second City. And it wasn't long before I started, and kind of right like crossing over to when I started, women were still like, the moms, the secretaries, the
Oh
teachers.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
We weren't really like the leading force all the time of sketches. So, but that changed pretty quickly in the 90s.
But Lucy Rivers is another person I've interviewed on the podcast, and she's a scholar of women in sitcom. She's
Ooh.
done like her thesis on it. She's incredibly
Oh,
intelligent. I know she's awesome.
wow.
But she talked about the categories in which females were put in sitcoms in
Yeah,
particular
yeah.
were sort of boxed into.
Mm-hmm.
And I should have had it ready for this interview, but one of it, you were talking about, you hit the nail on the head, was sort of she called it the grotesque. So it was the
Mm-hmm.
one who was allowed to be funny, but she certainly wasn't the love interest. She
Right.
certainly wasn't the
Oh, yeah.
desirable one. So when
No.
when you think about Shirley and what
Mimi from the Drew Carey show. Like
exactly
a monster character, literally.
right, over the top,
Like this over the top, crazy makeup, garish.
a lot of times you're laughing at her. Like you think of
Mm-hmm.
Shirley from What's Happening. I don't know if you watch the
Yes.
show, but like same
Did
thing.
I watch What's Happening?
I know it was just
Absolutely.
but yeah,
Absolutely.
it was
Yep.
always that where or so is that the desirable one. So
Mm-hmm.
she's predominantly there for eye candy, love interest. Then there's the killjoy. So that's
Mm-hmm.
usually the mom character, the wife character who's always
Yeah.
talking, oh, the
Yeah.
husband's not doing what I want. So there
Honeymooners.
exactly.
Yeah.
So she said
Where
she
were
went
you?
right, right. So those were, and there's one more I'm forgetting, but there were very few boxes
Mm-hmm.
that women fit into traditionally. And it was just so interesting. I heard an interview on another podcast that she had done, and it just was like blowing my mind because I was going through all these shows, that I
Yeah.
grew up watching, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, so she was a killjoy, she was this, she was that,
Yeah.
and rarely did it cross over. But I think with Elaine, she was at times very flirty and sort of seductive, but
Mm-hmm.
and she was funny, and she was not, I don't want to say grotesque, but going out on a limb and not being the attractive Elaine
Yeah.
that so it's like she just really she spans all of those things, which I think is so endearing
I think
for,
so
and it's such
too.
a great example to open up. And that's something else I talk about on the podcast quite a bit too, is just how the Elaine character, I think, really broadened, what we could do with females in sitcom. It didn't is
Mm-hmm.
in sitcoms. It didn't just have to be those very strict kind of categories. I just want to mention real quick, because I don't know if you know this part, because that anecdote you talked about with her advocating for herself and, hey, give me something. So the book, it was actually in a book that I read called Seinfeldia. Of course I read that book. So
15
uh,
people gave it to you for Christmas the year it
exactly.
came out.
And I'm like, oh great, I can make a fort. So Larry David actually went to the writer's room and said, and told them, because they were struggling, because they were in that mindset of like, she's the female in the cast,
Mm-hmm.
so we have to make female centric
Mm-hmm.
storylines for her. So his direction was, write her like a guy,
Write her like a guy. Yeah.
and that just freed them
Write her like
of
one of
all
the
that
four.
stuff.
She's one of
Yeah,
the four.
she's
She
one of
goes
the
to
four.
work. And, and I'm sure we will get to talking about this particular
Yes, we will.
episode, but in this episode, in watching her try to pick someone up, for an example, it's
Mhm.
exactly the same way. I was thinking about that same thing. It's like, watching her try to pick up a guy, it's the same scene that you'd write for George trying to pick up a woman. Like, there's
Exactly.
just no difference there,
Exactly.
and she's so good at making it that, like, she's, they were able to write for her like a guy because she could handle that,
She could
and
handle it.
make it look
Exactly.
really good. So
And also I've mentioned on the podcast before too, I love that she's also an equal opportunity character to get the pie in the face too. She's not
yeah,
above that, because I think sometimes
no,
women in shows are like treated with a little bit with kid gloves, or a little bit
yeah,
like, well, we don't want to make it mean for the
well,
female. What if she loses? It's like, no, man,
yeah, and
like give it to us.
you've got the rest of your acting career to worry about. So women are really it's tough out there, because
Mhm.
women who are the pretty ones, the ingenues, there is a limit, I'm sure, of what they're thinking they're willing to do,
Yeah.
because it's like, this job's going to end, and then I don't want to be typecast as this goofball.
Right.
Because if you're as pretty as she is, what do they do with you next once you've made the dance episode? You know, luckily she's good enough that she didn't have to worry about that. You know, she's going to go on and do New Adventures of Old Christine, and then she's going to freaking do Veep and own the world. So
kill it, yes,
and win like 6 Emmys in a row or whatever it was.
A lot of hardware on JLB's show. Well, okay, so next I wanted to talk about like what in before we get into the episode, which I swear listeners we're going to get to. Hey guys, I'm going to cut in right here so that we can take a quick break, and Nancy and I will see you on the other side. Hey, hot and heavy listeners, Shivani here. Now, during the breaks on this podcast, you usually hear about some product, television show, novel, support group, all totally silly and so totally real. I mean, don't even pretend you're not watching Shave Bus. But for this very special episode, I am here to tell you about an organization very dear to me called the Detroit Creativity Project. What is the Detroit Creativity Project, you ask? That's a great question. The Detroit Creativity Project is a nonprofit founded in 2011 on the belief that every child should have the opportunity to succeed. They're helping Detroit youth transform their lives through the art of improv. Now, some of you out there may not quite know how incredible that is, so let me explain. As someone who knows firsthand how much improv can make a difference in one's life, I have to say this organization provides such incredible opportunities for not only the youth of Detroit, but for the community as a whole. You see, when you learn improv, it doesn't mean that you're learning necessarily how to be the next, say, Julia Louis-Dreyfus and dazzle us with comedy. Learning improv fosters collaboration, respect for others, it builds literacy and encourages experimentation in a safe, supportive setting. Kind of sounds like what every human being should embrace, right? To quote George Costanza, we're living in a society. Now, whenever I think about the Detroit Creativity Project, I feel like a warmth wash over me, thinking about these young kids being introduced to improv. It's just so often during those formative years, we are told to tamp down certain parts of ourselves or tuck away what makes us weird and wonderful. And for the youth of Detroit, where 6 out of 10 kids live in poverty, having safe and creative spaces to express yourself can make such a positive impact in very difficult circumstances. Dear listeners, please consider donating to the Detroit Creativity Project by going to their website, detroitcreativityproject.org. And I'll also put a link to the website in the show notes for this episode. The Detroit Creativity Project. Being creative in Detroit is quite the project. Sorry, that's not their real slogan. I tried something, it didn't work, which is totally fine in improv, so I'm safe. Please donate if you can. Thank you so much. All right, let's get back to the show. What are your general thoughts about the Elaine character or Julia Louis-Dreyfus in general? I mean, we kind of touched on it, but just like how I was saying, looking back, how sort of groundbreaking she was. What were your thoughts? What are your thoughts about Elaine?
I think that she was created to be the conscience. You know, I think they were probably like, this is your ex-girlfriend who's now your friend. So she's the one, like we were talking about the honeymooners, she's the one who's standing there with the rolling pin in her hand and the curlers in her hair going, I can't believe you guys did that again. Mm-hmm. And she does have a lot of that. She has a lot of it. Like that's where the shove came from. Like, you're such an idiot. I cannot believe you, to all 3 of them. Like, she is very much like, you are just, like, as I think a lot of women are. I mean, we were both married to very wonderful, intelligent men, but like, I have my plenty of times where I'm like, really, honey? Like, I think it's a recognizable, relationship or marriage thing that people, it is fun for women to see other women being like, hands off, he's mine, ladies. Like, we, winking at each other like he's such an idiot.
Yeah.
So I think she was written to be that, to be the conscience, created to be that. But like we're saying, she lifted it. I think what they didn't expect was episodes like the dance, episodes like the bet, episodes like, I think where she is going to be toe to toe with the guys. Yeah. And that's where I say they got so lucky, because I don't even know I'm sure she knew what she was capable of, but no one else would have known coming off of SNL, coming off of what she had been allowed to do up until that point.
Right.
what she was going to be capable of. So I think that's why the character's groundbreaking. I think that's why, like, that's what I think of when I think of Elaine is like, I mean, I wasn't in the room. I am not Larry David. I am not Jerry Seinfeld. I think they are both, I've watched them create amazing characters for women, amazing, the
Mm-hmm.
women in Curb are all the smartest women too. Like,
Yep.
I think Larry David loves and respects women. I think they created her to be intelligent. I think they
Yes.
always knew she's smarter than all the guys, but
Yeah.
she's going to be the foot tapping, finger wagging one
Yeah.
because that's what, and somebody has to be that, especially when it's Jerry, George, and Kramer running
Right.
around.
Right. Right. Right.
But the rest of it that she was able to elevate it to be, like, that's where, when I think of Elaine, and all of us, when we think of
Yeah.
Elaine, you think of her in the bet episode, you think of her in the dance episode.
Yeah.
I think of her in the episode when they get lost in the parking structure. Like,
Oh my gosh.
so
Yes.
many of those episodes where the one with the baby,
Oh,
where they go and
yeah.
see the baby. Like, she's just got fantastic, impeccable delivery too.
Yeah.
Like, she just does. She's a fantastic physical comedian.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's what I think of when I think of Elaine. I think that she's, she's such a goofball character, and I think that Elaine and Julie Louis-Dreyfus got to grow into that and create it more and more and more as the seasons went on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I love that you talked about her physical prowess, because that's something
Mm-hmm.
I talk about a lot, episode to episode. Even if it's not doing something like the Elaine dance,
Mm-hmm.
there's something about her physicality. She acts with her whole body. And we talk
Mm-hmm.
a lot about that, with improv,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, I will preface this with saying I've seen great improvisers who sit in chairs the whole time and do fantastic, but
Yeah.
that's not the type of performer I am. And I love to be able to kind of express things, a
Yeah.
character, whatever it is, with my entire body, head to toe. And she's
Mm-hmm.
constantly acting head to toe. And
Yeah.
that's always something that I bring up in an episode. Even sometimes it's really subtle too, because
Mm-hmm.
it might just be a way she kind of does this with her hand.
Yeah.
And it's,
Yeah.
I just twirled my hand, listener. I know this is, I made the mistake again. You guys can't see, but yeah, I just, there's so much there that, yeah, I think with a different actress, not to say Elaine character wouldn't have been as good, but it would have been a
Mm-hmm.
different character. So, but I think to hold her own with the likes of Jerry Seinfeld, Jason Alexander, and Michael Richards, all powerhouses in their own way,
Yeah.
she really, she rose above, I think, what even probably her own expectations were.
100%. Way to go, Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah,
Way to go.
good job, JLD.
Has she ever heard this show?
I was just about to say, I'm sure she's listening. Oh God, Nancy, that's the dream.
Is that the dream?
That's the dream. I tag her. I try not to be like a psycho and like be, kind of
Yeah.
sliding into her DMs all the time. But
I mean, imagine if it were you. If somebody was doing a podcast dedicated to a show that you had done all that work on, you'd want to hear an episode, wouldn't you? You'd want to hear it. I mean, it's just a love letter. I would think she'd want to hear it. I'm just saying you should make it your personal mission is all I'm saying.
Well, it is. And
don't go to her house, but like
no. Come on, I wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't even now if I lived in LA, no.
Right.
No, I've tagged her on. I'm very strategic about when I tag her on like an Instagram post, because I do at the end of every season. I got an idea once. I'm like, hey, let me make a video, because every episode I talk about my favorite Elaine moment of the episode.
Yeah.
And it could be even an episode where she's barely in it, because that was a lot of the early seasons.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I would just I would pick and choose these moments that I enjoyed,
Right.
because I can always find at least one. So I made these little like these little collages of my favorite Elaine moments.
She'd love that. She's just too busy. She just hasn't seen it.
She hasn't seen it. She hasn't gotten around to it. She's kind
if
of busy.
She saw it, she would love it.
I mean, even if I just get a like or a whatever, I mean, done.
Little thumbs up.
Done. Yeah, I would love it. But I'm working on it. I'm working on certain routes there, but we'll see. That's the dream. That is the dream one day. Okay, so let's get into Jimmy.
Into
it. This in this episode, Elaine's plot is that she dates this man named Jimmy, but after some confusion, so she didn't realize he was speaking in the third person. So that is Jimmy's thing. He says Jimmy can dunk, Jimmy can do that, Jimmy loves Elaine. So she thinks she's going out with someone else from the health club, but she ends up with the Jimmy. In this episode, I do love how the little switch with the Jimmy. First of all, the first scene where she's talking to Jerry, the first scene she appears in, I should say, when she's asking Jerry, and she ends up also asking George and Kramer, hey, do you guys know that guy at the health club? He's really handsome. And they, save for Kramer, he kind of doesn't get a chance. But, you know, Jerry and George are just like, we don't notice dudes. Like, we don't, you know, I love when she says to George, you know, just admitting that a man is handsome doesn't necessarily make you a homosexual.
Right.
And then his response, well, it doesn't help.
Doesn't help.
I think that's a great moment, and the way this show tackles those kinds of things. You know, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think
like the not that there's anything wrong with that
kind
episode.
of, yeah.
You know, that episode that not
that
there's anything wrong with that. Look, I'm asking you if you know that episode. Yeah, okay. I think it's great. I mean, I think that, you know, everything that we've talked about up until this point this is a perfect example of it in that scene, because she comes into that scene like, you know, Mr. Pitt got her these tickets to go see Mel Torme, and she's like, I need a date. Hey, that hot blonde guy at the gym, I want him. Like, even that's such a great moment, because it isn't like, I need a date, will you come with me, Jerry, or will you come with me, you know, it's like, that guy, I think that guy's cute, what do you know about that guy?
Yeah.
And I just think that was so, you know, so cool. And then, you know, because this is, like I was saying, I think she was written to be, I think Jerry and Larry are very good at writing a woman in whatever circumstances they're in to be the one to be like, you guys are really idiots. You know that, right? Like, you're just totally really idiots. Yeah. And so I think that's obviously what that is saying. Like, seriously, you can't even talk about this guy because you're afraid that it's going to make you seem a certain way. Or,
you guys are the most judgmental people about nearly everything, yet you don't have an opinion on a man's appearance, you know?
Yeah.
I've talked about before on the show, and definitely before, you know, not that there's anything wrong with that episode. I actually, for that episode, I got a lot of opinions from my friends in the, you know, the queer community. Because I'm like, well, I know how I feel about it. I don't think it's offensive, but I would love to know, obviously, what people in the community think. And it was great to get some perspective on that. And for the most part, they thought, hey, you know, it's actually being treated really respectfully. Like, this is more, the joke is more about, or
about straight guys' attitude about it.
Yes. It's more that George is so cripplingly insecure about his own masculinity, and not as severe, but Jerry, the same thing. So, like, in this scene in particular,
and men in general, I mean, they are, it's a comment on men in general, especially at that time.
Yes, it's absolutely.
I mean, I think, I mean, I don't want to get too far afield here, because now we're on the precipice of the, like, what laugh is okay and what isn't, you know, in comedy anymore. And that's a whole nother episode. But I do think that, you know, when you're writing satire, we talk a lot about the right laugh and the wrong laugh, right? And the wrong laugh obviously is punching down and making jokes that make fun of the thing you're talking about that you do not want to make fun of, because you're probably talking about a group of represented people who've been made fun of more than enough in their lifetimes, and have more than enough people hating on them, and they don't need anything more than that. So you want to, when you're creating your own television show, build people like that up, right? Yeah. So instead, if you're, you know, a good satirist, you're going to make fun of the people who have the issue, not the put upon. And that's what I think that they were really good at that. I think that, you know, there's just a broad paintbrush for a lot of shows in the early 90s in general. That's just like, oh my God, humor's come so far since then. All of that's offensive. All of it's canceled. We don't, you know, I don't want to hear any of those jokes anymore. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of it on a lot of shows that maybe aren't written as intelligently as this one was. I would agree with that, you know, and there is a lot of stuff that I'm like, thank God these stereotypes are not on television anymore. Thank God we've grown since then. Thank God it's not okay to say blah, 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 whatever it might be. Right. But I do think when you're creating really smart satire, you want to put on camera that which you want to make fun of, right? It's the
Yeah.
it's the Stephen Colbert principle of like when he
Hmm.
created the Colbert Report, he became the character that he,
Yeah.
instead of making fun of conservatives, he became that character
Right.
and made himself look ridiculous. And
Mhm.
so anybody who understands satire knows that the butt of those jokes in that episode, it's Jerry and George. It's
Yeah.
about their attitudes that's the
Yeah.
problem. It's that they have to, it's that every single time they talk about somebody,
Yeah.
who's homosexual, they have to say, not that there's anything wrong with that, to
Right.
quantify it, to
Right.
qualify it. And it's
Yeah.
like, that is classic male behavior. And I like that they put it on there.
I
like
do
that.
too. I do too. And I think like just to give an example of shows that didn't do that so well, I mean, honestly, and from the same era, I mean, I think Friends was terrible with that kind of stuff. It was always
Yeah.
the butt of the joke was always being gay. Oh,
Mhm.
Chandler
Mhm.
kissed a guy once.
Mhm.
Oh, a guy might have a crush on Ross, and it's like that
Yeah.
was always getting the laugh,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Joey's
Or
turning
being
into a
fat.
woman. Exactly.
The
That
fat
stuff is
phobia on
so
Friends is like,
cringy.
seriously?
Oh my gosh.
Like
I
Monica's
know.
entire growth of a person could just be based on the fact that she wasn't fat anymore. It was like, what? Yeah, like it's the worst thing you could be.
I know. And so the 90s are interesting in that respect. I mean,
It is.
there are moments, and even in this episode, I mean, we don't have to get too much into it, but
Yeah.
the whole mentally challenged part at the end,
Yes.
that
Yes.
to
Yes.
me
Yes.
is, I think that's peak cringe for Seinfeld.
I felt the same way. I just watched it again yesterday or the day before, and I was like, "Wow, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah."
I think that definitely crossed a line. I don't think they wouldn't do that today.
I don't think they would
Obviously.
either, nor should they.
No, nor should they. So that part to me was very like, okay, there are some.
Because I think if they were here, if this podcast were Shivani and Nancy and Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld,
Yeah.
I think what they would be saying was that was about Kramer. It was about, what I mean? It was about the character. It wasn't about, it was the character who gets in these wacky situations.
Right.
But it wasn't. It was about the assumption of who he was, So no, I agree.
Doing a physical like
high cringe.
Yeah. We're laughing at the physicality that he's doing that's being interpreted as a mentally challenged adult.
Right.
And it's like,
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, there's no side of looking at that where it would be like, oh, I see what you were going for. It's okay now. Nope.
Yep. No,
that should be vaulted forever.
Okay. Yeah. So let's lighten this up.
Yep.
Sorry. We can't talk about this episode without talking.
We had to go there. We had to go there. Yeah.
So back to,
we do not endorse.
No, we do not endorse that. Back to the episode. So with the Jimmy, would you, Nancy, would you ever date a guy who referred to himself in the third person?
I don't think I could. I think it would be exhausting. I mean, it was just exhausting because it's so performative, right? It's so, I mean, it is the ultimate shield of like, I'm not, if you were a psychologist breaking that down, it would literally be like, this guy literally cannot talk in the first person.
Yeah.
That's how much he can't be himself. Like, it's pretty textbook, right? Like, if you've got to refer to yourself in the third person, there's huge issues there.
That's a big red flag. I know.
And even just from an annoyance level, like how long could you take,
I know.
You did it 3 times in a row.
I'm so on Jerry's side when he's just like, what is with this guy?
Yeah,
everyone else seems to be like, whatever, it's fine, accepting it. Why do you think Elaine goes out with him though?
I'm trying to remember now from the episode. She thinks it's Jimmy, and I think is it because she doesn't have another date?
I think so.
Just too short a time, maybe.
I think it boils down to that. So when there's a scene where she once it's pointed out to her by Jerry and he's like, no, that's Jimmy. She's like, no, that's the guy that gave me his number. She's still thinking it's the hot blonde guy in the exercycle. But so once she realizes that, then she tries to tell him. She says, so there was
she goes to the gym to cancel.
Yeah, to cancel. But then she so he's like, Jimmy doesn't.
Do you remember what happens?
Yes, she finds out he's gay.
He's gay, and he's there with his boyfriend, the blonde guy. So I think that's why it's like, now I have to take Jimmy. I think that's what they were trying to say in that scene, right? Like, now you're stuck. You got to take the third person guy.
Exactly. So I guess, A lot of times I try and I get too deep, but that's who I am and I'm doing this podcast. But I'm like, does this track with Elaine's character? Would she go out?
Yeah.
But I think there are moments that we all have in life where it's like, you know what? Sometimes I just need to like take a chance on something. I think this is one of those things. I don't think she's overly attracted to him necessarily. She
No.
thinks the third person thing's weird, but she's like, hey, I need a
Yeah.
date to this thing. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna do
I
it.
need a date.
Yeah.
I need a date. And it's, I hear you. I love the analysis of all this stuff. I love it. But I also think that, yeah, it's to a certain degree, it's like, this has to happen for the comedy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Of
My
course.
husband and I, this is getting completely off the track, but my husband and I have a saying that we always say whenever we point out a plot point to one another that's like, what, that would never happen? And then the other one says, spring break shark attack. because we once, on an incredibly bored, I don't know, Sunday afternoon or whatever, watched the movie Spring Break Shark Attack. And it is the most, it's like, it's not only is it a screenplay that seems like it was written by 9-year-olds, but it seems like it was written by a cotillion of like 75 9-year-olds who didn't even live in the same town as one another.
Amazing.
And then they all mailed in their separate scenes. Like, it's a mess from start to finish. No two plot points make sense. I mean, it's almost, I was gleeful, like watching with what an absolute train wreck of writing and production it is.
Oh.
I apologize to anyone listening who had anything to do with the production of Spring Break Shark Attack.
Because they're definitely.
But you know, if you worked on Spring Break Shark Attack, you know this better than I could ever tell you. But so that's our way of explaining to one another, don't overthink it. Like, it just has to happen for the advancement of the plot. Because we would literally, I was getting angry, like, who would do that? No one would ever do that. And he would be like, Nancy, we are watching a show. We are watching a movie called Spring Break Shark Attack. Like, why are you kidding me right now?
Just watch it. Just absorb it. Surrender.
So I think there's a little element of Spring Break Shark Attack with why she ends up going with Jimmy. But you're right, because what I'd love to see Elaine do, just to hop on this analysis bus with you, is to be like, I'm not going with that guy. I'll go alone, or I'll go, you know what I mean? Like, that seems more in line. But all four of them, the show's about being painted into corners, right?
Exactly.
If they're not forced into these situations of misery and ridiculousness, then the comedy can't ensue.
I never want to be that person that's like, this could have been solved if they just blah, blah, blah. It's like.
In episode 42, Elaine stood up for herself, and she would have done it here too.
Oh my gosh. And it's so, like, my kids are at the ages now, especially my daughter. She's really getting into, in the last year, has gotten into Christopher Guest movies, which I could not be more happy about.
Shivani, this is why you're such an amazing parent. The fact that your 12-year-old child loves Christopher Guest movies.
I mean,
chef's kiss.
But
you are raising these
right?
children correctly.
Yes. I'm like,
you don't.
The
ever
whole
know.
reason I never let them listen to Kids Bop. I'm not sure if you know.
Yeah. I know
non-parents know. Kids Bop is just the worst, and it's evil.
The pablum of pop music.
I'm like, if you have any respect for any type of music, I don't care if you don't, if you like, well, I'm not going to insult a genre of music, but
sure.
I don't care if you have any respect for music, you do not expose your kids to Kids Bop. Like, my kids were listening to the real songs, even if there were some swears in it. I just was like, I'm not putting myself, I was selfish. I'm like, I'm not putting myself through Kids Bop in the car. Like, it's just not happening. But anyway, so, just getting those comedic, the nuances, the all those types of different types of humor that for me, as a comedian, as someone who's like in this world, I'm like, it's important for them to understand comedy.
Yes, absolutely. So my idol growing up, my personal life idol, my brother was 6 years older than me, and he was like all things comedy, and he had the greatest taste in comedy in the world, right? And he loved Steve Martin before I knew who Steve Martin was, and he loved, I followed him through culture. Yeah. And I just learned everything cool that I needed to learn, from starting with music, especially. But I mean, we were like doppelgangers in terms of sense of humor. Like, we had exact matching twin senses of humor. So it 100% shaped everything that I think is funny.
Yeah.
The only place that I veered off a little bit is I'm a real Anglophile. Like I became a huge Monty Python fan and stuff in high school. And I had a sociology teacher who was a huge Monty Python fan. And he used to let us come in his room during lunch and eat our lunch and watch Monty Python
Oh, how
movies
fun.
and watch, and watch Flying Circus and stuff.
Nice.
So yeah. So then of course I went on to marry a guy from England. Totally unrelated, but now I get to watch all the British comedy that I want.
Seeing a pattern.
Patterns.
It's fine. It's fine.
But all of that to say, yes, I think that, if you're going to watch the stuff, watch the good stuff. And how cool that she's learning, because now you're learning about comedy and improv and, like watching those movies is kind of like that's the gold standard right there.
I was so happy. Best in Show was kind of a no-brainer. That's just a brilliant movie. But again, you never know, like that type of tone. And, you don't know if it's going to translate to, especially young kids now that are used to watching YouTube shorts and TikTok videos and stuff.
Yeah.
But
getting them to sit for a whole 2-hour movie is difficult.
Well, that in itself. Exactly. But I love interpreting this kind of stuff and Spring Break Shark Attack. Like that is such a great way to say, because we don't because my now conversely, and he's 10, but my son will be like, why do they do that though? Because of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's just for the humor.
It's Spring Break Shark Attack.
Spring Shark Attack. He's got great taste in comedy too, but it's just not as it's not too Christopher Guest levels just yet.
Right.
Okay, so getting back to the episode, I keep saying
yes.
that, but and this is what this is supposed to be, by the way. I have no qualms about getting off topic.
The Christopher Guest version of podcasts.
Exactly.
We just make it up as we go along.
Make it up as we go along. Let's talk about one other thing in the episode, because we're getting up on an hour here, so I don't want to take too much of my time or your time. And my time. My time's so valuable. No,
your time is precious, Shivani.
So precious.
Absolutely precious.
So one other thing that happens in this episode, and it's just a small part, but so when Jerry thinks he might have been violated while he was under the gas.
Right. By Bryan Cranston. And his hygienist. By dentist Bryan Cranston and his hygienist.
Tim Watley, Bryan Cranston. I just love the moment. And again, this is another moment where it's like, we can't be too sensitive, because again, this is Seinfeld. Of course, Elaine's going to say, so what? What's the big deal?
She says, so what? You're single. Oh my God.
And it's like, at first you're like, come on, she should be more sensitive. But it's like, in this group of friends, in this world,
in that world, and in that time, and I know I would love to know if she thinks that line is still funny or okay, or if she, if they reshot that, if they had to pick 5 episodes and somehow this one magically got chosen, it wouldn't. But if it did, maybe it would. You never know. And if they pulled him out of a bingo spinner, and they had to remake those episodes word for word, would she want to say that line or not? I don't know. Like it's because now in talking about. We were talking earlier about things that are like, good. Let's never do that again. Another thing is like, if you're talking about, because I think in comedy and in the world back then, there used to be an assumption of like, these things can happen to women. They can't really happen to men. Right. Exactly. Like that attitude of like, men aren't like when, if a teenage boy who was 16 or 17, had a relationship with his teacher, it was a very different thing than if a teenage girl had a relationship with her.
Exactly.
So in that world at that time.
Yeah.
So let's not forget that this is a network show. These are lines that have to get past censors, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how okay it was to say that at that time. That's how okay it was to make that joke. And for that time, for me, like just like meter wise as a writer, I just respect the way that it's delivered and written, if that makes any sense.
And that's where I'm coming from too. I don't endorse
No, absolutely
just completely
not.
Dismissing someone's concern about being sexually violated.
Right.
Because it's terrible, obviously.
Right.
But I'm putting it into the context of these characters who, let's face it, they're not lovey-dovey friends. They're just kind of like, they have their moment, that not even really, because Larry David had this motto for the show. He said, no hugging, no learning. He knew that from day one. He's like, I don't want it to be that show. I don't want there to be
we learned a lesson
special
this week.
Seinfeld. Yeah, there's never going to be that. So these friends get pleasure in taking each other down a peg
Yeah.
here and there, you know, and that's
Taking the
so
piss, as the British say. Taking the
exactly.
piss. And also, she, as an actress and as a character, I don't know that it would have been nearly as funny in anybody else's hands. Like, I don't
Totally.
know if George or Kramer, even as the characters, if they had said that to him,
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's something inherently funny, and this is a benchmark of the show and of their relationship. There's something inherently funny in Elaine having no sympathy for any of them at any time,
Exactly.
because again and again, this is why we love her so much. That's not something women were ever allowed to be on, you know, women were always
Right.
the one at home making a pie, worried
Mm-hmm.
about you. How was your day at
Mm-hmm.
school? How blah, blah, how was work? What's wrong?
Right.
What's wrong? So to be like, suck it up, like, women never got to be that person. They never
No.
got to be the suck it up person. And there are many, many, many instances in this show where she, of the four of them, is the least upset or affected by something. You know what I mean? Where they are
Exactly.
far more butthurt than she is, and she's just like, you know,
And yeah, and
come
that's
on, get over it.
constantly that's
Constant.
constantly exposed, you know, where
Yeah.
they're the ones that are the babies most of the
Yeah.
time. And she's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like she can just slough things off
Suck it
really
up.
easily.
Suck
Yeah,
it up.
totally suck
Yeah.
it up. And that's an interesting dynamic too with the fact that she's Jerry's ex. And I think throughout the
Yes.
show we sort of forget that every now and then, but like that being established early on, there are things she can say to Jerry that the others can't say to him.
Yeah.
There are connections between them. So it's a really cool dynamic. You know, I think
Yeah.
I love the relationships. Like I think George and Elaine together that's some of the best stuff on the show. Like
Oh,
they're
absolutely.
like that brother sister animosity. It's
Yes.
so funny. But
Yes.
between
Because
her and
you're
Jerry.
right. Like, I'm sorry, I cut you
No,
off.
go
But like
ahead. Go ahead.
her thing with Jerry is like, yeah, with Jerry, it's like, don't be like this, don't act like this.
Yeah.
But she knows, you know, she knows for the most part he's a cool guy because she
Right.
dated him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And for all intents and purposes, he's kind of maybe the love of her life, right? So,
Yeah.
so like, you know, I think that when he's acting like an idiot, it's in the moment, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to George. I think with George, it's who he is across the board.
For
She
sure.
thinks needs an overhaul.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's just something fundamentally wrong
Oh,
with this guy, and you know,
totally.
and I love that it's such a role reversal of the woman constantly getting to look at him like, what is wrong with you? Like,
I
come on,
know.
dude.
Again, not endorsing dismissal of any kind of sexual
Hmm.
violation, but
Right.
again, in this context, in this show, it's delicious that she's the one
Yeah.
who can be, it's against type,
Sure.
as we see women in these
Yeah.
sitcoms. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
just that's why
It's a
I
great
appreciate
moment.
it.
It's a
It's
good
so fun.
moment. It's a good line. She's, yeah. And again, her delivery,
Yeah.
like, if it wasn't for her delivery, if it wasn't for who she is as an actress, you wouldn't even have this show, because you have thousands of lines that you could pick at any given
Oh,
moment.
yeah.
That her delivery specifically, there were moments in this episode that I watched it and I'm like, God, her reading on that, like, it's just
I
a
know.
notch above. Like, she's just great.
I
She's so
know. I
funny.
mean, my listeners get sick of me saying it, but I'm just like, I from the subtle to the absolute, big
Over the top.
moments, over the top moments, like that she has that way of knowing the exact, like, how much gas to push for
Hmm.
every line. And that's a big reason I've consciously and subconsciously looked to her,
Yeah.
still to this day when
Yeah.
I'm prepping for an audition or I'm
Yeah.
prepping for a shoot. I'm kind of like, what would Julia Louis-Dreyfus do?
Well,
If I'm
because you
really.
still need to be rooting for her. And I love the, like, no hugs, no learning. I love that. So I don't think they cared over 10 years, 11 years, whatever it was. I don't think they
Yeah.
cared, nine, at all, like, who was going to, if they were going to end up together. I don't think they went into it thinking about that at all. I don't think that
Mm-mm.
was the game plan.
No.
But you kind of do, as a viewer, you kind of root for them. But I mean, her, like we were saying before, all of the other stuff she's done, Veep is a perfect example.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
in terms of a character who walks the line of, like, we still have to like her. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
She's horrible to everyone around her. Her own daughter, her
Yes.
aides who give of their entire lives, like,
Yeah.
the the funny of this character is that she's just so mean to everyone,
Oh my
and yet
gosh.
you love her. You are still rooting for her. And like there are not many actors who can pull that off, because
No.
the actors who can be that big of an asshole, especially the female actors, you've crossed a line over into Jane Lynch territory
Oh.
where that's who you are now. You're a
Mm-hmm.
taskmaster.
Yeah.
You're an asshole. That you're
Yep.
just going to be that person all the time.
Oh, for sure.
And so, and she gets to be like, we just love her and we root for her all the time. She gets to be that bad and that ridiculous,
Hmm.
and that thoughtless towards other people without crossing the line into forever being branded as the jerk.
My husband and I talk about this all the time. I'm fortunate enough to be married to someone who indulges me in many conversations about analyzing the character, writing,
Yeah, yeah.
analyzing writing, character, everything about shows. Because
My husband
we,
does too.
there's, it's so
I
great
know. It is so good. I guess until you said that, I didn't realize how much I do it. Oh,
all the time.
God.
But and I'm again super lucky he finds it interesting too. But like I feel like we've been watching a lot of shows where they've been really hyped up, and the
Mm-hmm.
fundamental flaw for me a lot of times is, look, the character doesn't have to be likable
Yeah.
necessarily,
Yeah.
but I still have to care about them.
Yeah.
And I'm just learning as I'm watching more and more shows that are just, they were just inundated with so much out there. But like I go, it's a function of an exceptionally talented actor who can pull that
Mm-hmm.
off, and the writing. I mean, it's just,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much. I mean, there's so many elements to what creates a show, obviously, but if you have those two, you're already
Mm-hmm.
ahead of the game. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I think of, again, Mr. Or Dr. Tim Watley,
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
Bryan Cranston, like it's another example, that anti-hero thing where it's like
Mm-hmm.
he does such despicable things. He's
Yeah.
lying constantly to this
Yeah.
family who loves him. And like, but yeah, in the end, you're like still rooting for the guy. And
Still
it's
rooting
just,
for the guy. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So that is an exceptional talent.
Yeah. And there are so many. Yeah. Yeah. Bryan Cranston went on to prove that he's a little bit of a talent.
A little bit,
After Seinfeld, he went on to
spring.
prove it in a couple of ways. He had some cameos that are noteworthy.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that it's funny too, because I think that shows are so of the moment, to
Sure.
like what's in the ether of culture of the time. And like, you mentioned Friends as an example. And like, boy, do people love to hate that show now. And
Oh
like,
yeah.
and I get it. I get it from a cliche standpoint. I get it
Mm-hmm.
from a punching down standpoint.
Yep.
A lot of it was like, these are six gorgeous people who are going to make fun of people who aren't like them, and they're
Yeah.
all super white, and
Yeah.
and nobody else is going to come into their world. And I mean, there's a lot of flaws in the
Of
creation
course.
of that show, but like when you take it by character by character, like the Rachel character is a perfect example of like, she was not written to be a very nice person, you know what I mean? Like she
Right.
starts the whole show off by like stranding her husband at the altar, and then she does a lot of really selfish things as the show goes on.
Right.
But at the time, there were millions of people who loved the show so much, loved her hair so much,
Mhm.
they had to get the Rachel do. Like,
Yeah.
there's something that's in the culture of a show being of that time that I think makes you forgive the character and root for the character in a way
Absolutely.
that generations who come along later do not do.
They
So
don't get
people
it.
who might turn Friends on now on Netflix, they're like, these people are awful.
Yeah.
They're awful, and they're selfish, and they're whiny, and they're blah.
Mhm.
And I get that, because they're looking at it from the outside,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I wonder about shows that are on now,
Yeah.
like, I mean, The Good Place is a good example of
Yeah.
like, Kristen Bell's character, not a good person. It's kind of what the entire show's about, right?
Right.
Is the
Right.
arc of her redemption.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, but like the rabid fans of that show, and how much people absolutely loved that show,
Yeah.
and very recently. And I wonder, like, if 20 years from now, it's interesting
Mhm.
to me. Like Parks and Rec is a really good example.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So my daughter's getting into that now too. She's watched
Yeah.
like a few episodes. Now she's full binging.
Yeah.
And again, I'm so lucky. I have an abundance of people who are willing to nerd out on
Yeah.
comedy with me. So
Yeah.
she was saying the other day how, and I just thought this was really endearing, because we're raising our kids to really, especially in this climate, like, hey man, like just be kind and be respectful of people, and like just
Mhm.
the basics of being a good human,
Yeah.
that seem to be more and more forgotten, and unfortunately with
Oof,
adults
boy.
nowadays. But anyway,
I'll tell you.
she says, I really love Jerry Gergich so much because even though everyone's like really mean to him, he still like loves everyone so much. I'm like, I know it's sort of at first it would make her really sad, but why are they so mean to Jerry? Like she'd get very almost protective of him.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, yeah, it's not right, but somehow there's always the punching bag in the friend circle, but they're still always invited to the party. Like it's
But
just
they did the smartest thing with that character.
yeah.
They never, like you were talking about, no hugs, no learning. There's never really a moment. I mean, kind of toward the end, but there aren't a lot of moments where they're like, come on, everybody, let's be nicer to Jerry. What they do to redeem that character is they give him the most phenomenal life outside of that place. And that's just Amy being brilliant, right? Like that's
Totally.
just that whole team, Mike Shore, like knowing it's show, don't tell, right? So it's like so that shows like when he goes home and he's married to Christy Brinkley and has these perfect adorable kids who love him.
Yeah.
Jokes on all of you yahoos at the office.
Yeah, totally.
Who make fun of him all day. And like, mwah, like love that. Love that that's how they did that. Never a moment of like, hey, you guys are mean to me and blah. Yeah. It's just like he takes it and it rolls off his back because he doesn't give a shit because he goes home and he's got the better life than any of them. Like he's a happier person than any of them.
He's achieved basically what they're all looking for.
And 100% that's what they were going for with that character. And that, and, so and they just like, they did that so well.
So well. I know.
So well.
That show, to me, it's like another level of ensemble comedy, of just that really, there's, okay, well, that's a whole different podcast. I'm not even going to get into that tangent, but I am, we're on the same.
I'll come back on your Parks and Rec podcast.
Yeah, I'll do a Leslie Knope. I'll do a Leslie Knope podcast.
Yeah, but no, it's another one that grew. And it's the same thing. It's funny because I'll button our conversation by saying this. Like for a show that's no hugs, no learning, what does grow, this is going to sound so sappy and stupid, but what does grow is our love as viewers for these characters. Absolutely. So you kind of can't help it to have them grow a little bit, even if the characters never learn a damn thing. Right. We get to know them so much better. Mm-hmm. We know how they're going to respond before they respond. And like we were talking about in the very beginning, it's like, that's why, Elaine, George, Kramer, really all of them grew to be richer characters, even with no hugs and no learning. Because what we do as viewers is like, that's so Elaine, and you just,
In fact, they get worse. They get worse as people.
Right. But we forgive them more.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. We've grown to just accept them for who they are and taken why that's so funny.
I remember like my first show that I directed at Second City, like the most fascinating thing for me to learn as a director was about running order, because what you can get away with in a scene late in your second act that you could never get away with in the middle of your first, because the audience loves the performers by then. They love them. So and awesome. Like, it's just, where you move things around and laughs that people are like, oh, and groaning and, bleh, and they hate if it's high in the first act, you can put it low in your second and it'll kill. And that's just in a 2-hour show. Right. So by the time you've spent 9 years watching a show like this and loving these characters and these actors so much, it's like, oh, that's so them.
I love that. That's such a great example. Well, Nancy, you've exceeded my expectations. I knew this was going to be a great chat.
Fun.
But thank you so much.
I'm so glad you had me. And this is such a great idea for a podcast. I've ever since you started it, I'm so glad you asked me to be on it. I just think this is the coolest thing. And I will nerd out about comedy with you anytime, Shivani.
I love it. I'll definitely, we'll have to have another chat, and maybe we'll actually talk about the episode a little bit more.
I know, right? Anybody who actually wants to know about this episode better go and watch it, because we didn't do it justice.
Don't worry about it. This is exactly what I wanted. So
awesome.
Thank you again so much, Nancy.
Thank
you. It's so great to see your face.
It's so good to see you.
For just me, listeners, you can't see it, but this was so incredibly fun and insightful. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, wow. That was such a fun chat with Nancy. And it could have gone on for hours and hours. Once you get nerds together, guys, it's just, there's no stopping us. But, we know enough to cut ourselves off, which is what I kind of had to do with me and Nancy, because I know the lengths I can go to with my blabber. So thank you again to Nancy Hayden for giving your time for this podcast. And not only that, just your extremely insightful thoughts and observations. I really treasure everything you had to say. And I know I'm going to carry it with me when I'm doing future episodes of this podcast. So thank you, Nancy. And thanks to all of you for listening. I will see you next time.